Welcome, everybody, to the Digital Nomad Experts Podcast by Beach Commute. Today, we have a special guest, Mashon Thomas from Live, Work, Travel. Mashon, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's just really nice to be here.
And where are you? You are living a work and travel lifestyle. Where are you calling in from today?
From Halifax in Yorkshire in the UK. I've been here for about a month and have another 2 or 3 planned.
Okay. How's the visa requirement situation working there? I was just there a couple days, and I know I didn't have to extend for that, but I don't know how it compares to Schengen.
Yeah, no, for Americans, we have a really generous situation over here. We can stay in the UK for up to 180 days.
Wow.
So that's 6 months. Yeah, it's changed from when I first came here back in 2006 when I was doing a study abroad in Spain, and you travel over here for the weekends. So the 6 months is really, really nice. And I've actually talked to a couple different people. No one can give me a clear answer on whether that's 180 days in a year or whether it's rolling. I don't quite understand it, but once I'm in, I can stay for up to 6 months.
That's a sweet deal.
Got quite a few friends here. Yeah, I spent last summer here as well, living on a narrowboat, which was a really cool opportunity. I didn't realize that England has this amazing network of canals that go through the whole country. And lots of people now have converted these old barges, not barges, but like these narrow boats that they used to use for transport into homes. And yeah, that was a really cool opportunity that came about through another friend I met while traveling.
How was that? Were you able to get Wi-Fi on there?
Yeah, I have a hotspot that I travel with, and just hooked it up through that. Had Wi-Fi on the boat, and there's co-working spaces in a nearby town. Yeah, it was an amazing, really amazing opportunity. One of those random things that I can say now. I lived in a boat for a while.
I've seen them on Airbnbs, especially in Amsterdam and places like that, but I'd never pulled the trigger on one, so I've never actually talked to somebody that lived in a boat before. So that's quite a unique experience.
Yeah, I think it would have been hard to just see pictures of and pull the trigger on, but it was because of that kind of friend of a friend situation. Yeah. And she had me over for coffee, and I just thought she was so cool, like living on a boat. And then she's like, I got to be away for all summer for work. And so why don't you boat sit for me? And yeah,
okay, why not?
Amazing. I'm sure you've had these opportunities though. The more you travel, the more you just meet amazing people and have these really weird random things happen.
So true. Well, let's back up. And if you wouldn't mind, we had a chance to catch up, but you haven't introduced yourself to our audience yet. So if you wouldn't mind, why don't you tell our audience who you are, where you're from, and then maybe we'll get into a little bit of your history as it progressed to the point where you started Live, Work, Travel.
Yeah, sure. I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio. Most of my family still lives there. And just from a very young age, I had the travel bug. My mom would tell me that from a very young age, I would just go to the library and bring home all these books about travel, about the world. I was interested in other places and other cultures. But like a lot of people, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just, my dad was very firm that all of his kids would go to university. I'm one of 7, so quite a big family that I grew up in. The advice at 18 was kind of, well, if you don't know what to do, just pick something, just pick anything, just pick a major. So I majored in marketing because I thought that sounded easy. And it kind of was, but I like to joke that I got a degree that immediately became obsolete because I graduated in 2007 and, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all these things weren't even big yet. They were barely, just kind of coming onto the radar. So like many people out there, I didn't ever work in my degree. I just got a job after college and ended up moving to Florida and changed completely. Like I met and started dating someone who was a teacher. I looked at that lifestyle and thought, wow, that's way better than working a 9 to 5. I'll have summers off. Kids are kind of cool. I don't know. Oh, I should mention this too. I was homeschooled growing up. So I didn't have that whole school. I had nothing to really relate it to. So for me, it was kind of fun and cool and interesting. Like, school. So I retrained to become a teacher. At the time, Florida was going through a shortage and they just needed you to take a couple classes that you could do while teaching. So one of the things that comes up over and over in my story is that I'm very self-taught at everything. I just kind of fall into things and then figure them out. And teaching was no different. I decided I was going to do it, took a test, shadowed for a few days, and then had my own classroom. And it sounds bizarre. I know that, but that's genuinely how it happens. And I was good at it, and I loved it, and really enjoyed it, actually. Stayed in it for 7 years in a time that many people, I think the statistic is most people quit after in their first 3 years.
Middle school
So
teachers or just teachers in
yeah,
general?
I think teachers in general, if you can make it past those three, you've got a good chance of making it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the education, it's going through a difficult time
Hmm.
right now. A lot of people are leaving teaching, and it's a shame because when it was me and my kids in our, the four walls of a classroom, I just really loved it. Loved that. It sounds so cliche, but that light bulb moment when, a kid gets what you're saying, and you see that light bulb go on. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I loved that. But there's a lot of difficulty in education with like the bureaucracy, the constantly changing metrics and benchmarks and stuff. It's a lot for
Yeah.
teachers. So I eventually had to get out.
And you were in arguably the most difficult age period, right? Middle school is notorious for being a very difficult time to try to educate children, isn't it?
It is, but I loved it.
Yeah.
I think that in talking with other teachers, we all have this thing, we can't imagine doing what anyone else does. If you're high school, you can't imagine any of the others. If
Sure.
you're elementary, you can't imagine the others. To me, I was, I couldn't imagine little kids, elementary teachers. Like to me, they're just absolutely
Hmm.
amazing. And I couldn't imagine teaching high school because at the time I was 22 when I first started and I looked like I was in high school myself. So the thought of teaching, 17, 18-year-olds that were just a little bit of an age gap for me was like, I can't imagine that. So I found my
Hmm.
niche in middle school, and I think I got on really well because I was still young enough to kind of be hip and cool,
Oh,
so
those were the best teachers.
12, 13
The
year
ones you could relate
olds,
to, and
yeah,
they
they
were
thought like,
cool. They weren't all
exactly.
grouchy and
Yeah,
just, jaded by having so many students over the years.
exactly.
Yeah. You quit at 29 then, right? 22, 7 years. Quit at 29, 30?
Yeah, go heading into
Okay.
30 something, somewhere around
And
there.
you
Yeah.
wanted to,
Yeah.
did you want to get back into marketing? What was the cause of that shift?
No, so I was really settled at that time. So I had been in a long-term relationship from 22 to 30, 8 years. My ex and I, he was also a teacher. We had a house together. We had pets. We had the whole kind of life sort
Doing the
of
American
sorted.
thing.
And I
Hmm.
just, yep, doing that American dream. All that was missing was the 2.4
Yep,
kids or
exactly.
whatever it is. And just as I got closer to 30, I was just going, I don't think I can do this for the rest of
Hmm.
my life. It just felt like I was living in Groundhog Day. Like I can't just every day is the same. I wake up and I do this, and is that all there is? And I think, we have those milestone birthdays that, as cliche as it
Hmm.
sounds, they kind of wake something up in you. And at 30, I was going, okay, so 30 more years, I'll be 60.
Hmm.
And is this it? Is this all I'm just gonna stay on this exact track? I don't know. Something seems off there. And I had always been a little bit entrepreneurial on the side. I was always trying to earn more because as teachers, you don't really make much. So you've got the summer break and then no money to actually do anything. I felt after we'd, take care of the house, all the expenses. So those little entrepreneurial side bents had always kept me passionate about doing something, earning a little more money to have some more spending money. But yeah, so coming closer to 30 and realizing, okay, I don't think I want to do this forever. What else could I possibly do? I've always been entrepreneurial. Maybe I could just do another business that would help me, do another job that would help me earn more money and then figure out how to start my own business someday. But so the difficulty was coming to terms with that, coming to terms with the fact that my whole life was going to have to change, having the hard conversations with my ex because he wanted to keep on doing exactly what we'd been doing. Like he was happy in that life. He always wanted to be a teacher. He still is a teacher. He was very settled in that place. And I was just going through all of these. I used to travel. I did a study abroad in university. Travel is still important to me, but I haven't been prioritizing that. How do I, just come into terms with like, I couldn't have both. I couldn't have the life I wanted and a life with him, which I think a lot of people also can
Yeah.
relate to. Had those moments where it's really, really hard, but it's the reality. He didn't want to travel and I didn't, you can't change somebody else. I didn't want to go through life dragging somebody along in my dream. I had to realize like, okay, I've gotta let him live his life and I gotta go
Yeah.
after what I want alone, which is really scary.
I think a lot of our audience can relate to that feeling that you had where you're in Groundhog Day and you feel like there's more out there. And you can't even envision the idea of doing the same thing until you retire. It's like, what's the goal here? Like, what is it, just to make it to retirement and then everything good is going to happen? A lot of our audience is kind of on the edge of, I want to become a digital nomad, but I'm not quite there yet, but they want to because of those thoughts that you were having. So I think what you're saying probably resonates quite a bit with our audience, and it definitely clicked with me. I'm feeling a lot of the similarities of these thought processes of, well, I love traveling, and I have to make some sort of change in order to accommodate that, because it feels like there's just something missing, with the way I'm living my life.
Absolutely. My parents just retired a couple of weeks ago, and they are in their mid 60s, and it's mind-boggling to me because they're in the process of downsizing, selling their house, and then they want to come meet me different places around the world and get some of that traveling in, But to me, having started at, I guess I was about 35-ish when I set out on this digital nomad life, I'm like, wow, by the time I get to their age, I'll have had so many more years of being able to just experience the world.
We talk about this on this podcast. It's like this travel time, this digital nomad time. It's weird, compressed time. It's like so much happens in so little amount of time. I mean, I've been doing the digital nomad thing for, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years or something like that. But it feels like this chapter of my life, the last 4 or 5 years, has extended 15, 20 years worth of experience and stories and just like all kinds of stuff that's just character building and growing that I just wasn't getting before that. It's like watching a American football game, It's like there's only 60 minutes, but it felt like 180 minutes. It's just like triples the amount of time and experience you get. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that is so true. I actually caught up with a friend yesterday for lunch, and I hadn't seen him since being here in England last summer. And, he said, not much has changed. Things are pretty much the same. And what have you been up to? How many countries have you been to? And I was like, well, not that many really, just, and I started counting off. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, I guess I've been to 7 countries, been to the pyramids of Egypt. I went to Antarctica, which was wild, and just like ticked off all of these, a couple really big, bucket list trips in the last year since I've seen him. But it just felt in a way a bit normal, because that's how your life sort of trends. You start to do things that you visualize as normal, but they're really not.
Yeah.
They're really not at all. It's just becoming used to a new norm, right? Where I can be in Argentina 1 month and then I'm relocating to Europe the next month. It's bizarre. And I think it's important to have, like the podcast that you're doing, and more build a community around this, because one of the things I've struggled with is having like-minded people to be able to tell your stories to and listen to their stories and their struggles as well, because they're a different set of struggles, and you can't really talk about them everywhere because people are just like, shut up, I don't want to hear it.
It really, it's stark. Like you really notice it when you have those conversations with the people in your hometown, because like you said, it becomes the norm for you. You're traveling around, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to, I just up and decided I wanted to go to Serbia like a week ago. That seems, fairly reasonable to me. But if I were to go home and tell somebody about it, they're like, well, Serbia, weren't they in a war? It's like, yeah, 30 years ago. It's like, you get these perspectives that you just don't get when you're used to all this kind of travel.
Right. I first started in Medellin, Colombia.
Me too.
That was the first place I picked to live.
Yeah, me too. That's how I got my start.
Oh my goodness. What year were you there?
I think I first went there around 2015, 2016, but I wasn't a digital nomad yet. I had just gone on like a proper vacation. And I just liked it a lot. I said, man, this would be great if I could, maybe I should take a sabbatical and just move down here for 3 months. And then the thought just kind of evaporated. And then I joined Wi-Fi Tribe, and the first chapter that I saw, well, actually, I was just searching for Medellin, I think. And then I saw that there was a chapter there. I was like, oh shit, I don't have to work. I mean, I don't have to take a vacation. I can actually work while I'm there. And I can go back to that place that I really, really liked. And then I did it. I was like, oh, wow, this opens up a whole new Pandora's box. I can't go back now. I have to do more of these things. And it just kind of became like, oh, this is what I've been missing from my life. It became like a travel addiction type of thing. But since then, I've gone back there.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know how many times. My girlfriend is from there and lives there. So I'm there like all the time, at least 3 times a year.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, it's such a beautiful city. So vibrant, so amazing, so much to do. But everyone, was worried and had all of these, worries. I was like, there's a huge digital nomad community there. I took the recommendation from a friend who's traveled the world, and he's like, I think you'll like it there. So I went, but like anyone who hasn't traveled was just like, all of these fears and things they've seen on TV and past, like you said about Serbia, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, things were very different, but these places do change. And that's why, I love to bring friends over to visit me wherever I am, or family if they'll come,
See it.
because it's just like I want to show you a
You
different
got to see it.
side. I want to show you the
Yeah,
reality.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Well, let's
yeah,
bring it back to your story a little bit. So we've
yeah.
now finished up with the middle school life, and you've discovered a world of travel. Pick it up from there.
I left my ex and moved away to a different city. And this was in 2015 when the code schools were booming. I don't know if they still are. I just don't pay attention to hardly
Uh-huh.
anything anymore. But computer programming, kind of retraining, going back to become a developer was really, really
Hmm.
big for a while. And there was a code school in Fort Lauderdale. So I thought, I don't want to go back to traditional school, back to university and spend another couple of years. I'm not really great at school. I just don't really,
Hmm.
I don't do well in that environment. So I thought a really intense course, 9 weeks of training. Sure, let's do it. So I went to code school. It was the hardest time
Oh
of my
wow.
life, but also so rewarding. Like it was so intense. But it was like learning Greek, right? I had zero computer programming knowledge whatsoever. And you're just thrust in a classroom with these other
Hmm.
adults and you just learn to code. And you're just like day in, day out, eating, sleeping, dreaming, code. And it was exhausting. It was exhausting, but it was amazing because I had these other people around me and we just formed this like tight knit group of all struggling together.
Shared misery.
There were one or two people who were like really smart and got it really fast. And I was like, oh God, they're so
Yeah.
annoying. The rest was just like, this doesn't make any sense. But it was, yeah, it was a really good time. I learned that, wow, I can do things that are really hard. I can do things I didn't think I was going to be able to do. It just really reinforced the thing that had kind of been happening in my life of just, you don't know how to do something, but just decide that you're going to do it and then you'll figure it out. That pattern just holds true with all of us. At the beginning, we don't know how we're going to do something. So I got done with code school and realized, okay, I like coding, but not enough to become a developer and do it day in and day out. It's not quite the personality fit. So I bounced around in a couple different things. I had friends kind of helping me out, getting me a job here, a job there. Again, just little startup type stuff. And I never really knew what I was doing. I would just show up at a company and like this one, they needed a technical writer. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that, but I can figure it out. Go on YouTube. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. But those 2 years were just kind of trying to figure out what my next thing would be. Nothing felt permanent, nothing felt right. And then I got hired at a remote company. And that had been my dream, right? I thought if I can just get a remote company, then I can travel, then I can work anywhere. And this company was paying only $20 an hour for a copy editing position, which was nothing I'd ever done before, but I'm just naturally good at
Picking
kind of
stuff up.
proofreading and,
Yeah.
and yeah. So I thought, okay, I'm like 34 at the time or something like that. I'm starting over at the bottom of this company, $20 an hour. I'm taking, a pay cut from like less than teaching even. But I thought, well, I'm smart. I'll be able to figure it out. I'll be able to grow in the company really fast. So I was there for 10 months and I got laid off just suddenly, along with like 30% of the company, just one Friday in July. Chop,
Thanks.
all you guys are gone. And it really pissed me off,
Took
to
it
be
personally.
honest.
Yeah.
I did, well, I just, it shook up everything I thought about having a job because I'm from the Midwest. There's a hardworking work
Hmm.
ethic. You work hard for your company, you do good work, and you're loyal to the company, company's loyal to you, kind of thing, kind of mindset. And I realized that the company is not
Yeah.
loyal to you. That when things go wrong and people on the chopping block, it's not they distance from the personal, right? It's just like you're just a number and a name and we got to cut our budget and yada yada, you got to go. So really shook me up, and that's where the anger came from. I was just like, you can just be going along doing your job, doing a good job, and through mismanagement of the company, now you got to go. Wow. It was a really rude awakening. I was just like, I don't think I'll ever feel safe again working for another company because I'll just be waiting for that Friday where they just go, yeah, we don't need you anymore. So the anger led to, all right, if I can't trust anyone else, who can I trust? Okay, I can trust me. I'm going to figure out how to make a living. I'm going to start to do my own thing. So it was awful, but it was great because I don't think I would have taken that leap otherwise. I knew that I had this entrepreneurial spirit. I knew I wanted to start my own thing, but that comfort of having a job kept me from doing so. So when it came to, all right, no job, you got to figure this out. That was really what lit a fire under me to make it happen and make it happen quickly. So freelancing was the natural kind of thing. I'd heard about it never really dabbled in it before, but I knew about Upwork, and I knew that you just kind of have this thing of like, I can figure it out. I mean, there was tons of doubt. There was tons of, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like it was easy. It wasn't. It's like, it was just a struggle again. Am I doing the right thing? Should I go get a real job? No, I can make freelancing work. Am I doing the right thing? Should I get a real job? No, I can do this over and over and over, until I got that first client, and then the next one, and then the next one, and started to go, okay, wow, this is crazy. Like, something's moving, something's happening. This is cool.
What were you providing for the client?
Yeah, so that's a fun story.
Let's get into that.
I got into copy editing because that was the last thing I had been doing, because I had a real struggle with believing in myself. I thought, okay, I'm a middle school teacher, but that doesn't really translate into business skills. So I thought at the time. Then I thought, okay, I'm a half-ass coder because I've learned some about software development, but not enough to really feel confident in that. And just had this mishmash of skills. So my brain, I got laid off as a copy editor, so I'll look for copy editing work. So I'm on Upwork. And the problem with doing something like copy editing is people don't necessarily understand it. And when you're in a, like, not everyone, like, not the broad spectrum. It's not like saying, like, I'm a teacher. Everyone gets that, right? If you say I'm a copy editor, people are like, oh, what's that? Or they would confuse it with copywriting, which is a very different skill set and very different pay. So I found myself in a position of having to try to convince people that they needed my services, which is never a good thing, right? You want people to already realize, I need help with this. You want to create a product. Not have someone show up and be like...
You want to be the product that people come for. Yeah, exactly.
Right, not just, yeah. So I got one client through that. She needed some help with her website copy and an app she was creating, just needed a second set of eyes to go through. And I just realized from that first bit, she wanted my help originally with copy, but then I noticed and said, hey, as I'm navigating the app, this seems a little weird to me. This seems a little weird to me. Maybe if you move this here, that kind of thing. And she was super grateful for my suggestions. And that was like kind of the first aha of freelancing. Like, oh my gosh, don't just do what they ask you to do, but keep your eyes open for other ways that you can be helpful. And she was just so nice, so grateful that she really gave me this boost of confidence. And I thought, wow, I would love to work, for clients like this again. But I realized I wasn't getting that many Upwork jobs. And I just had this aha one day where I was just like, what if I went after clients instead of waiting for them to come to me on Upwork, right? Because you're just submitting a proposal with hundreds of other people, hoping that they pick you, which is kind of very much like the traditional job market. You send out your resume and hope for the best. So I made a list and I thought, who would I like to work for? So looking at other companies that I had been either worked at previously or knew of people that we had worked with, just made this expanded circle of kind of like everyone I kind of knew and people who were doing something that I would be interested in. So blogging, selling an online course, selling an online, subscription service. I was very angled toward online people because I thought, if I can get in with online clients, they'll never have an office and they'll never require me to come into an
Good
office.
Good move.
So I was very, very structured about that. I'm not falling for that. So I found a few clients and offered them, just reached out to them pitching my services. And one of them hired me for some kind of editing project. Like he wanted some analysis of this blog post and why it was performing really well to kind of see if we could engineer other ones that performed as well and yada yada. So I did that for him and he really liked, one of the things that made me successful so fast was just putting my all into anything that came my way, no matter how big or how small. So I gave him, 110%, turned that back over to him. And then we got on a call where he was going to offer me a different project, but he ended up sort of just having a moment on the call, just being like, I am exhausted. I am tired. This was the founder of the company. I'm exhausted. I am tired. People come to me all day, every day with problems. I don't feel like I ever get anything done because I'm just solving other people's stuff. I don't want to talk to other people in the company anymore. I'm run down. I need somebody who can just sort of be this right-hand person and help me. Do you think you could do that? Mm-hmm. And in the early days of freelancing, my answer to everything was yes. And then I would get on YouTube and figure it out, So I said yes without having any clue what I was in for. And that turned into 6 years I've been with him now, I think. It turned into running his company, the day-to-day operation side of it completely. Wow. So I sort of accidentally fell into what I was good at, which is operations management. And it was just being the right place, right time, and also realizing that he had a need and I could learn to fill that need by just listening, showing up every day, identifying problems, and figuring things out. So at the time, he had about 6 people working part-time, but just completely scattered freelancers. Nobody was checking in on them. There were no rules, there were no systems in place, nothing like that. So I came in and just everything he didn't want to deal with, he just threw off to me and I figured out how to get it done. Like he would send emails, Slack messages, WhatsApp, whatever, just like, we need to do this. We should check into that. We need another person here. Da, 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 until I just took it all off his plate for him. And so working with him helped him grow the company from 6 people to now we're at about 25 people, freelancers around the world. No, none of us have ever met really. And yeah, it's just been an absolute wild ride. But I found that there are so many of these people out there, small business owners, entrepreneurs, they've started something and they get to a point where it's no longer fun because they're drowning in all the things that they have to do. And they just need good people to come in and be able to help pick up all those pieces, line them up, make order out of chaos. And turns out I'm really good at that. And it's a lot of fun for me.
Yours is a very unique case. You're very intelligent, obviously, and you've worked very hard to get into that situation. I don't know that would be a practical advice that you'd be able to give to somebody who's looking to become a freelancer, or is it? Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. I've never been a freelancer, so like, what would you advise for somebody if you're consulting a group of people that want to become digital nomads and they're thinking about the freelancer lifestyle and thinking about that pathway, and thinking, well, how do I get clients and how do I find my niche as you found your niche?
Yeah, so a couple things that I think are actionable is to dabble in things before like niching too far down. Because when I was getting started out, I had the same issues of people saying, hey, so you've got to niche down, you've got to really drill down, get specific about what you offer. And I was a mess. I was like, well, I'm a copy editor, but I'm a teacher,
coder,
but I'm like, I've got some coding, I've got all this jumble of skills. How do I niche down? This is weird. So what I did was dabble. I took on a few things here, a few things there, a few things there. Like, that was the rush version of my story, but there were other things in there where I was just trying this, trying that, and going, okay, I don't like, trying copy editing. I was like, wait a minute, why am I doing this? I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I'm just going to back myself into a corner of doing something that I don't like. So I did technical writing thing as well for another client. I did some accountability kind of work with a client where he worked with me to help him get a course created. And we had, check-ins, and I would kind of help him figure out the big picture and narrow things down and outlining. So there were these other little things that I dabbled in, and we would go, yes, no, I don't know that I like this or that or the other. But 2 big moments that came for me were, one, realizing I should really try to think about what I want to do and then go after clients that will allow me to do that. So getting specific, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be remote clients only in the online space. They've got whatever business model they're doing, whether they're selling a course or a service, it's all online because they're going to have problems that I can help with. And they're not going to care if I'm doing that from down the street or across the world. It's all online, right? So making that list, and what I advise people to do now in the beginning as well is think about the companies that they would like to work for, whether it be a big company or a small one, like, Nike or Apple, right? Like that's absolutely mind-boggling, outrageous, right? You're not just going to walk in and get a job at Nike or Apple or whatever. But when you can identify who you would think you would like to work for, it's easier to kind of reverse engineer what is it about that company. So what are the qualities that they have? What is it that they do that inspires something in you? Why would you like to work for them? And then how can you find smaller versions all around, right? Because it might not be, you're not getting in with Nike, but what is it about them? And how can you look in your own kind of area, market into the smaller companies like them, and not necessarily like athletic wear specifically, but whatever their values are, whatever they are doing that makes a difference for you. And then how can you find that and then go out and pitch those smaller companies on working with them? I find that to be really useful, really useful. And the other thing was just that figuring out that small businesses need good help. I think that's a thing that I struggle with now with teaching other freelancers because I'm on the other side, right? And I can see that, but I can also see where they were or how they are where I was going, nobody would possibly need my skills. Nobody would possibly need my help. But it's just every small business owner that I know is struggling with how do we find good people? And it's not necessarily a skill thing. It's those things like the professionalism, the reliability, the showing up, the doing what they say they'll do, the kind of the long-term need versus, oh, we need a person to do Facebook marketing and we're going to do like a 6-month thing and we know where to get that help. It's almost what I'm finding in my circles is that it's the more of the abstract skill that is needed rather than the
it's a
specifics.
Relationship rather than like a transactional that you're describing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So once you've identified a brand that you want to work with, or at least you're going down the right pathway of identifying companies that you want to get in with. What tactics do you use to approach them to get their attention and not be one of the hundreds of people applying for the job or trying to land the contract?
I tell people to go to the client directly with a cold pitch, cold email. I have found success in that because I do crazy amounts of research beforehand. And what I mean by that is just really getting a feel for the company. I will go, read everything I can about them, stalk their Instagram, their Facebook, their LinkedIn, really do the background research to figure out what do I think this company needs? What can I help them with? And instead of just dropping in, I'm sure we all get those emails from people just like, hey, do you need more? Whatever, like really spammy sounding. You can tell, I've gotten ones from people who are just like, we think you're great fit for our watch brand that we're selling. You could be an influencer, and I'm just like, oh, for goodness sake,
so
get out of here, No, dropping into a company's or a person's inbox with a well-crafted pitch that shows that you've done your research about them is so powerful because, I'm a small business owner myself and I have problems. I have problems all day, every day. And if somebody could just show up and solve that problem, it's going to be amazing. Because I know I'm like, oh, I need to hire somebody. Like I've got a guy leaving me in a month and he's already retraining the next person, but I'm like, we're going to need to hire to fill that spot. And okay, yeah, like I know I need to get on that. But if someone just showed up and is like, hey,
fix your problems for you.
I can help you with
here's
this.
How.
Right. And that's so powerful. So basically, I had this difficulty in the beginning. There's this fear of selling ourselves, right? This fear of rejection, all that. And you're going to take some rejection. But when you can show up and say, like, I've seen this before where people have pitched me, like my Instagram will go a little dark for a while and I won't be putting anything out because I forget. And somebody will just say, hey, I noticed that your posting has stopped. I think I could make some really cool stuff for your audience. And there's a very big difference between somebody doing that in a canned way and someone who's actually said, I noticed that this post, I like this one or that one. I like what you're doing here with this. We could probably go here and take it this direction. I'm going to listen to that more. So there are so many problems out there, but if you just take a little bit of time to get to know that client and show them how you can directly solve their problem, it's so powerful. It's so powerful because most don't. They do the canned outreach.
We talk about that quite a bit. And one of the main problems people have with getting jobs is misconception that you need to send as many resumes out there as possible. You need to fill out as many applications as possible. And just volume is going to work. But as before, I used to hire a lot back when I was CMO of a marketing agency. And I would open up a spot on Indeed or Jobify or any of those platforms. There'd be 100, 200 applicants in like a day. And I didn't have anybody screening these things. I was screening these things and I didn't have time. So the only people I'd hire were the people that put in that extra time. And it probably cut down their application volume by like 80% to do the work that they were doing. But they were stalking me on LinkedIn saying, hey, I read your article. Hey, I checked out your company and it looks like you need a little bit of help right here and here's how I can help. It's like, well, something I always said, I can't teach somebody to be hungry. I can't teach them to be curious and to be interested in what I'm doing and the company. I can teach them the job. I can teach anybody the job, but I can't teach somebody to want to help me make my job easier. And if you're proving that already, like you're the first candidate already, you're going to the top of the stack. And it's
exactly.
Like, it really does take that extra. It's a lot of work, doing all those things that you're talking about, stalking social accounts and finding the right person to talk to and sending them customized messages and stuff. But your hit rate is just going to be so much higher, isn't it?
Well, and here's the thing that's wild. And this is like, again, why I'm just so passionate about sharing the knowledge, because when I first heard about freelancing, I thought it had to be very feast or famine. I thought it had to be constantly pitching clients. I thought it had to be just this crazy world that was so chaotic. And I just didn't think that I would fit well into that. I was worried. I was just like, I don't do well with that. I can't see myself constantly pitching clients and all that kind of thing. I have had, because of the type of work that I do, I don't need a lot of clients, and my clients tend to be ongoing, which is another thing I suggest to freelancers, especially if they don't know what they're doing, like or they don't have a skill that they feel can translate. I tell them to think about something that a client is going to need today, and they're also going to need a year from now.
That's good advice.
And 2 years from now, because freelancing can be a very long-term thing. I've been with my longest client for 6 years. Most of the clients that I work with, it's 3 to 6 months minimum, and many of them have me stay on in some capacity. So if you look at that, let's say I've got 3 clients, 15 hours each a week, roughly, that I'm spending in their businesses, and I can be with them for years. And it's fantastic because it's not this stressful, oh my gosh, where am I going to get my next paycheck? It's very structured, very organized, and I know where my money's coming from. And if one of them leaves, it's typically, quite a notice period, because I'm usually training over somebody else who can take over what I was doing for them. So I encourage people to get in with stuff because if you do good work, the client's not going to want to let you go. I have been with the one client for 6 years. I have basically set up the entire half of his company in terms of operations and how it runs, managing teams, all that kind of stuff. There's so much knowledge that lives in my head. I mean, I have a great relationship with him. If I was ever going to leave, I would definitely be like, all right, let's start planning 3 months in advance. Let's do knowledge transfer, hand it off. But he doesn't want to leave me, right? And I've hired myself, have had assistants in the past, very, like a personal assistant, kind of manages some of the business stuff too, but just knowing things about my travel arrangements and birthdays of people, my family that I want to try and keep track of, going to a conference and just being like, oh yeah, I ran into so-and-so, take this note about them. A good assistant is going to get into every aspect of my life. They're going to know all the things. I'm not going to want to retrain somebody else. So as long as they continue to do good work, we could work together for years and it would be fantastic. So really, that's so useful to get in with clients in a way that you can do ongoing work for them. And just make yourself useful. It is, the clients don't want to get rid of you when you're doing good work. It's such a hassle to find and train new people. So to me, it's worth it to do that initial deep dive, knowing that this one proposal I send out could be years of work.
I mean, for the audience here, people that are hiring, whether you're hiring for a company or you're hiring just a contractor, freelancer, like that, you don't want to cycle through a bunch of people. It's a pain. You get inconsistent work. You get new work styles that you're not familiar with. You get all kinds of stuff that just takes away from your day-to-day job, and it's really, really hard. So it's so true when you say that clients don't want to get rid of you, because they really, really don't. They want somebody that they can trust. And if you prove that you can do good work and they can trust you, they're going to hold on to you, because it's so hard not to hold on to somebody.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point earlier with just that you can train anybody to do a job, but it's about that hunger and that desire to do good work. And I'll put this on my job postings. When I'm hiring on Upwork, I will purposely put in the name of my company. I'll just be like, I'll put that somewhere in the job post. Hey, I'm Mashon, I'm an entrepreneur, digital nomad. I run liveworktravel.com, blah, blah. And I'm waiting to see who goes out and looks me up. And so many people don't. They just go straight to, here's a copy and paste proposal. And so like you said, if someone goes out and goes to the blog and then finds the Instagram and the podcast and all these different things, there's so much information out there on me. I would be a dream if I was, applying to my own job, because it's just like, oh, this person has this giving. Sometimes in Upwork postings, you can't quite tell who the client is, but if they give you that information and you go off and run with it, it's just, like you said, they automatically rise to the top of the
So tell me a little bit about the company that you've started where you're helping people become freelancers.
Yeah, so Live Work Travel came out of just a need to share this information with other people, because freelancing changed my life. I went from constantly sort of in this struggle financially with, being a teacher, and then I was still paying off student debt. I was actually $30,000 in debt when I got laid off, between student loans, my car that was upside down, just credit card debt that I'd run up from going to code school and trying new things and stuff. So I was in a pretty bleak scenario, and finding that I could get clients and get high paying clients that paid me more than I ever dreamed possible, because I think growing up in the Midwest, making $50 an hour was kind of a big deal. Kind of a big deal. Making $80 an hour, $100 an hour, rates like that, that was just like, what are you, a lawyer or something?
Yeah.
It just never
So
even
obscure.
crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Right. And to think like, oh God, little old me, middle school teacher without any like coherent skill, just this crazy train wreck of a past, if you look at like everything that I've done. And it turns out clients will pay me that. And not only that, they'll treat me better than any of my bosses ever have, with respect. It was mind-boggling. And so I basically sort of became evangelical about it and just like, I've got to share the word. So what I do now is I blog. I have resources up on my blog. I recently started a podcast earlier this year to also share with people just kind of mindset tips and freelancing advice. And I have an online course as well that just kind of takes people through my journey from zero to earning. I earned $94,000 my first year of freelancing with no clue what I was doing. And I was just like, if I could do that with no clue, I need to, package up all this knowledge and information, have people skip the mistakes that I made. And I'm passionate about showing people, because the thing, I just think that so many people, myself included, when I first got started, we discount how important it is to be hungry and to be willing to do the work. And that really, it pays off in just a way that I could never have imagined. So I can't shut up about it. I just can't. It's really important to me. It's really important because I have seen, I still see my friends and some family members, struggling with jobs that they hate, with, not getting a raise when they were kind of expecting one, or not getting that end of year bonus, with inflation and just energy prices and all this stuff going up, and the struggle to make ends meet. And I go, it doesn't have to be that way. Even if they start something on the side, I'm just really, I gotta tell people there's another way.
I gotta just restate that for the audience. You made $94,000 a year, your first year as a freelancer, without knowing what you wanted to do. So this is doable. We try to reiterate this as much as possible, that this lifestyle is doable. You can figure it out. And you made a significant amount of money while figuring it out, not even having it figured out. So that really, really inspiring statement there.
Thank you. Yes. I blew my own mind, for sure. And it just felt like a veil kind of got taken away, because I felt like what I had heard previously was all of the negatives about freelancing. I felt like I'd sort of been told like, okay, it's really hard to find clients, and it's really hard to keep clients, and you just spend all your time chasing clients. I remember telling somebody once too, because I was excited, like I was making more money than I'd ever made in my life, like easily more than double teaching. And I told somebody I was a freelancer, and they were like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And then I realized that they were thinking of like the starving artist, of really difficult and really struggling to get by. And I was like, "No, you don't understand. Like I'm happy, I'm good." And I had a friend as well who was doing like web design. So in his business, it was you had to keep going out and getting clients, because you can only make a website once, right, type thing. So I think that that's what a lot of people are familiar with, just doing a one-time thing and that's it. Whereas I found success in getting clients that are ongoing and long-term, and it really doesn't feel that much different than a regular job, in the sense of, I've got this work that I do for this client, this work I do for the other, and my hours are very stable, my day-to-day is very stable. It feels so gentle and so peaceful, and so like it's just a nice way to live. That was a big impetus for starting the blog as well, just going, I got to share this with other people, because there are more than one side to it. Everybody's like, there's tons of ways to freelance, but it's important to know that all of these different options exist. I know a person who has had over 1,000 clients in the line of work that they do, because it is very, after one, you go on to the next one, and it works for their personality. I would be so stressed out all the time. I could not live like that. So there's something for everyone. And I think it's important for people to know that if they lean more towards like me, it would be nice to have just a couple clients, long-term, quiet, little peaceful little freelancing life, that option exists.
In wrapping up this conversation, what would you say would be the first step, the first practical step that somebody listening to this interview today would be able to take today? What would be the very first thing that they should do to take their steps to becoming a freelancer?
That is such a good question. First step today.
I think you mentioned researching companies would be one of the initial steps. Would that be the initial step?
That's what I was leaning toward. I would either say that, or the other thing that comes to mind is math, right?
Uh-huh.
Doing the math for how much they'd like to earn. Because I've had this conversation with quite a few freelancing students as well, and oftentimes it's so much harder in our mind to see possibility. Like, I used to think earning $100,000 was absolute madness. There was no way. But breaking that down, it comes down to, with taking like a month off a year, with only working 35 hours a week, it comes down to about $70 an hour if you're doing hourly rate. And one of my, less than 3 months into freelancing, I'd landed a client at $80 an hour. So really, I think the math is really helpful. If somebody I think the first thing today would be to sit down and do the math of how much do you want to earn? What sounds like a good number? Is it 60,000 a year? Divvying that out by the days, how many hours do you want to work and how many weeks do you want to work a year? Get that actual hourly number and let that rattle around in your head a little bit, because it might be less than you think. It might be, $40 an hour, or it might be $50 an hour, or something like that. And that is so doable in freelancing when you then go on to, like you said, next step, kind of researching companies, or not even researching them, but sitting down. I would say the next step is sitting down and going, who would be my ideal? If I could work for anybody, who would it be and why? What is it about them? What about their core values? What about the type of work? Just sitting with that to really feel like, okay, now I have kind of a picture of who I should be going after. Those are two really good exercises.
Great advice. Yeah.
That can be done today.
Yeah, that's great advice. So do it today. Go out, just crunch the numbers, figure out how much do I need to make, how much do I want to make, and then start writing down what's the ideal client that I would want to work with. What does the day-to-day look like? What kind of work could be interesting? That's something it's a very actionable, doable step, and it's going to feel good doing that kind of thing. It's going to feel very like forward facing. You're taking a step up the stairs and you get closer and closer. Mashon, this has been an awesome interview. I say that as genuine as possible. You've been an amazing guest for the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Where would you like to send some of the listeners? To your website or Instagram? Where do you want to send them?
Yeah, Instagram is great. You can find me at Live Work Travel IG on Instagram, and also my blog is liveworktravel.com.
Awesome. Check her out on those two locations. Mashon, thank you again so much for your time. You've been an awesome interview.
Thank you. This was a pleasure.
Bye, everybody. See you next week.